One black congressman from New York last week argued that the defund the police movement is dead and good riddance. Any elected official who advocates for the abolition and or even the defunding of police is out of touch with reality and should not be taken seriously, he said. His words come as a growing number of black Democrats work to distance themselves from the slogan. Several are proactively calling for measures to fund the police departments across the country. Former Orlando Police Chief Representative Val Demings, who is running for Senate in Florida, tweeted Wednesday, police departments and law enforcement officers lack sufficient resources to keep our communities safe. With crime rates increasing, I am leading efforts to hire additional detectives, provide officer training, and catch the bad guys. In her bid for mayor of Los Angeles, Congresswoman Karen Bass outlined a plan this week to add 250 more officers to the city's police force, noting that residents don't feel safe. Defund the police has become a useful tool to aid Republican attacks on Democrats. The National Republican Senatorial Committee went after North Carolina Senate candidate Sherry Beasley on Wednesday just for being friends with Representative Cori Bush. This came shortly after the Congresswoman said she won't back down from supporting the Defund the Police movement this week. Notably, Beasley's campaign website carefully states that she knows we must have comprehensive reforms that establish accountability, increase transparency, and put more resources into public safety, not less. And after appearing on this show in August, Wisconsin Senate candidate Mandela Barnes also received blowback from the NRSC for allegedly dodging the question on whether he supported the Defund the Police movement. In the past, Barnes, a progressive and former community organizer, was reticent to distance himself from the slogan, but late last month, he told the Wall Street Journal that he does not support defunding the police. What I do support is investing just as heavily in preventing crime from occurring in the first place, in addition to ensuring law enforcement agencies have the resources that they need, he argued. Joining me now to discuss is Nina Turner, candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives from Ohio. So, Nina, we see these candidates, these races are tight. Everybody's trying to get every vote they can. Some of these people believe that the Defund the Police movement has become toxic. In fact, major operatives in the Democratic Party have said so, including politicians, including the former President Barack Obama himself has said, you start to lose when you say things like defund the police. Where do you stand on defund the police? Not just the slogan, but the philosophy behind it, which is that you take a look at the funding the police departments get and you reallocate some of it to other services that are best handled by other agencies and not men with guns.
Or women with guns. I mean, Charles, we're
or
putting
women
a big
and women with
burden
guns, absolutely.
or women with guns, yeah, law enforcement officers. I think people getting hung up on the wrong thing. The question becomes, historically, what has been the relationship between the African American community and other communities of color when it comes to law enforcement? We do understand, and nobody can deny, that the notion of protecting and serving was not always a foundational point when it came to the Black community and how law enforcement's relationship or lack thereof with the community started in the first place. So I don't think that these things are diametrically opposed. And so we can't get stuck on that slogan, defund the police. Rather than getting stuck there, we have to focus on what are the true needs of a community and how does policing fit into those needs. Public safety is a wide range of things. It's not just policing. Do people have jobs? Are their children being educated? Do they have decent housing, as you were just talking about in your former the segment right before mine? So getting caught up on that slogan, to me, is the wrong thing. And I say that, Charles, as somebody who, I live in a city where 12-year-old Tamir Rice was shot by law enforcement officers less than 2 seconds from them arriving on the scene at a playground, shot and killed, not just shot, but also killed. And I worked with Governor John Kasich, a Republican, somebody who, him and I disagree on many policies, but what we agreed on is that we had to do something. And he created the task force on community and police relations. that title, that name of that task force was deliberately created as a sign to say that police and community must come together, that there is a need that both are respected and protected, but we cannot deny that there's a pain and a heartache, particularly in the Black community, when it comes to policing. And that is why Black Lives Matter sprouted up. It is Black Lives Matter too, so treat us as such. It is not about being against law enforcement.
Well, I'm coming back to this question one more time from another direction, which is this. Cities are not like the federal government. They can't spend money they don't have. There is a fixed sum of money that is going to go to whatever the budget line is. In this case, law enforcement. I'm just asking, do you support the idea of looking at the budget line that the cities have allocated to these police departments and seeing if there is money in there that should not be there but go to other services? No one is saying when there's a burglary, they don't want to call a police officer. But if someone is having a mental health crisis, they want to be able to call someone who is better suited to do that work than calling police. Right now, the police is who you call because there's no one else to call. I'm just asking about the funding itself. Do you agree with the idea of looking at that funding and reallocating some of it, any part of it, to other services?
Well, it's having what I advocate and what I stand for is having a comprehensive look at what safety truly means. So the point that you're making about mental health crises, why are we sending law enforcement officers into situations like that without having somebody who's a professional who can help them deal with those things? I mean, I think cities all across the country, about 400 bills between cities and legislatures have been introduced to deal with policing in some way. So people are making this an either or. It really is a both and. We should be looking at budgets across the spectrum, not just within law enforcement, but the money, follow the money. Where we allocate our money and our resources towards show what we care about most. We need to deal with the underlying conditions and challenges and pressures on communities to help exacerbate those challenges. And part of that means taking a comprehensive look at public safety. Charles, we need police. Like I have law enforcement in my family. You know, my son is in law enforcement. So I understand this from both sides. It is not an either or, it is both and. Let's look at these budgets and let us do what is necessary to drive down the pressure so that law enforcement only have to deal with the worst of the worst. And we're dealing with other social conditions that may create more crime in said community in other ways.
A political morning consult poll released this week found that 75% of people said defunding the police is the reason that violent crime has increased. They're saying that it's already been defunded. That's even though many departments never ended up decreasing their budgets. Some of them even increased their budgets. What does this say about the disinformation campaign around the slogan of defund the police and whether or not candidates can even talk about this issue, or are they living in some sort of cone of silence because the public now believes it has already happened and it is a problem?
Charles, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, and we have to be able to go and have these deep conversations about what is necessary. What does a holistic community look like? And to your point, most police departments have not been defunded. But, you know, I think it was Einstein who defined insanity. Is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. And that's why I and other people who are experts in this area certainly believe that there must be a comprehensive approach. And that comprehensive approach includes law enforcement. You can't have that approach without having law enforcement, but you got to have the community. You have to have public health officials. Police officers or law enforcement should not have to go it alone when it comes to what public safety, us reimagining what public safety looks like in the 21st century. While at the same time, Charles, we must be mature enough to admit that when it comes to policing in America, Black bodies bear a higher burden of proof. And, you know, to quote the urban poet Ice Cube, my skin is my sin. We got to be able to have that kind of conversation and at the same time require transparency and accountability from law enforcement. That's not too much to ask. and also make sure that resources are there so that we make the interactions with police on the criminal side less likely. But as long as human nature, there's evil and good in human nature. And as long as we have the evil side, we would be naive to think that there are not some people who do have to be dealt with through the criminal system. I won't call it the criminal justice system because all the time it is not just, but we can get there. Just because that's the reality today, Charles, does not mean it has to be the reality tomorrow. So let's come together and do a new thing in the United States of America.
There is nothing we like more on this show than a quote from an urban poet. Nina Turner, thank you so much for joining us. As always, appreciate your time.